I would bet you with heavy odds that if that happened to you 40 years down the line, you would say, oh my God, I can't believe we should have gotten an abortion.
We're going to talk about a statement that you disagree about. I don't know what that statement is. And I'm going to ask questions about your level of agreement or disagreement and the reasons for being where you're at. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Perfect. Awesome. Can you explain the main reason that you're on strongly disagree without revealing the claim?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the non-aggression principle. I believe in the right to not be unjustly aggressed upon. I would view doing the claim as an act of aggression that's unjust. I don't think that we judge a person's right to life or their right to not be unjustly aggressed upon based on their quality of life or based on any circumstances that might befall them. I think that that's their judgment to make, and if they want to choose euthanasia later in life, that's their choice and not anybody else's. I don't think that people should be able to make that choice for them.
Did you understand his main reason?
Yes.
What is your main reason without revealing the claim?
It deals with rights, human flourishing, and what kind of society we want to have, how we view elements in the civilization even.
Did you understand that?
Yes.
Okay, so are you convinced that your main reason is good enough to be on this mat?
Yeah, well, I strongly disagree because, again, I don't think that it's for anybody to decide whether or not somebody else should be alive. I think that is their choice alone. I would have a question for Pete, though. Would you be okay with ending that life after the point at which that act is achievable? I'm trying to disguise the language a little bit. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying. Boy, I've thought about that a lot. I think no, but I could be persuaded otherwise, but I think no.
Why is your reason good enough to be here?
Because I think that I'm aware that my reason is fraught with historical moral peril, and I'm aware that my reason is in need of some extra justification, if you will. But I think that's all outweighed by both a kind of utilitarian calculus and for the quality of life of at least one, if not two people in the society as a whole. So I think it is justified.
Could your reasons support an opposite view?
Could my reason support an opposite view? So, no, I don't think so. My view is just going to be that the right not to be unjustly aggressed upon is paramount to human flourishing and preventing people from killing each other all the time, doing undue harm to each other. I actually think the opposite. I think that if you allow the other position to happen, that it will be sort of a slippery slope to tons of other undue harm and sort of logical loopholes.
Someone could not stand on that mat and use your reasoning?
I don't think so. I don't think so. No.
Okay. Maybe. Could someone use your reasons and stand on that mat?
Someone could use my reasons and stand on the disagree. I suppose with enough mental gymnastics, you could stand on strongly agree, but someone could use my reasons in good faith and stand on disagree.
If that's the case, why aren't you at agree?
Because I feel that the reasons that they would have, while somewhat legitimate, their first principles would be different in terms of what benefits the society as a whole and flourishing the society as a whole. So their reason could be it benefits the society in a different way because it teaches people something about humanity and kindness and decency. And that those could be true, but those are not overriding considerations for society's flourishing, for the utilitarian part of my analysis.
Do you see where, or could you understand where I would see an imbalance? Where it's they're not good enough to be on strongly agree, but they're good enough to be on strongly disagree.
Yeah. It just depends on the weight one gives the first principles. I think I weight those first principles different from different from the way he weights the first principles.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think so. I think generally my position is also going to be about human flourishing, but I think that the way you achieve I think we view the way you achieve that differently, or which thing is more important to human flourishing. Mine is going to be less based on like IQ or like personal ability, and more based on like, are people respecting other people's rights and not unjustly aggressing other people? I think that's more important than having a necessarily perfect society.
If I understood correctly, you said someone could not use your reasoning to stand on that mat.
Yeah.
Could someone use it to stand on this mat?
I don't think so. I think that my reasoning is probably unique to this side. I don't think that you could remain logically consistent and stand really anywhere here. I think that we have pretty different reasonings probably. So I think it's going to be unique to myself.
Can I ask him a question? How confident are you that the reasons you have justify the matter you're on as opposed to one more?
I suppose just the fact that I feel strongly about them, and that the reason that I stand here, the justification that I use, the moral framework, is the underlying framework of all of my beliefs.
Okay, so can I ask you another? So, what about the people's lives who are immediately affected by that for the rest of their lives? How does that weigh into your calculus?
Parents? Yeah. So I think that when you conceive a child, I think that you have a parental obligation to take care of it, regardless of what its circumstances are, unless you give it up for adoption. I think that you should have the right to sort of pass that obligation on, but I don't think that you should have the right to end the obligation via killing, if that makes sense, post-birth or pre-birth. So if that sort of makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about it from the moral principle, and I'm thinking about it for the utilitarian idea of the flourishing of society, and I'm thinking about it from friends of mine who are in that situation, and it's just devastated their lives. I mean, it's just utterly devastated their financial life. It's just taken such an incredible toll, and I'm not sure, and I want to be careful how I state this, but again, this is a very touchy subject. I'm not sure that if it were me, I just don't know how I would deal with it.
Okay. Are you open to moving at all?
I'm open to moving on all of my positions. I'm not set in stone on anything, but
What would be something that would cause you to move without revealing what the statement is?
I think that it would need to be, I think there would either need to be a better sort of moral framework provided, or there would need to be like sort of a reasoning within my moral framework. So what we talked about, right? So I don't think anybody could stand on this line using my reasoning. If you could find a way to stand in any of these other positions with my moral framework, then of course I would move. Or if a better framework was provided, of course I'm not, I'm pretty firm in my beliefs, but I'm not closed-minded, so I'm not just going to immediately reject anything that anybody else has to say just because it's different than what I think. So yeah.
You're open to moving provided a different or better moral framework?
Better justification, yeah.
Are you open to moving?
Yes.
Do you have an example of what would cause you to move without revealing what the statement is?
Yeah, if we had restructured society in such a way that not only were these individuals taken care of at minimal taxpayer expense, but somehow by doing so deeply enriched the society in which they were living, that would definitely cause me to move. Like, that would cause me to move rather dramatically. But there'd be something else that we would need. We would need for the society to have different cultural values as well.
If you did move, what would that mean for your social standing or other like psychosocial motivations? Would that have any effect on those?
I think it would. I think it's generally probably a pretty socially unacceptable position. I don't have any, if you can justify it with reason and with logical consistency, then I'm not, I don't think any less of that person. But I think society broadly probably would view it as negative. So social acceptance would probably go down. Yeah, people would think of me differently, I'm sure.
Okay.
I'm open to it.
If social acceptance had no effect on this, would that cause you to move at all?
No, my social acceptance is pretty much in the toilet, so I'm not really too concerned with what people think of me.
Okay, so that doesn't have a lot of effect on where you're standing.
No, I'm hated far and wide.
My friends couldn't possibly care less about this issue. It's an issue, and I bet we would agree on this, that it affects such a small number of people, a minuscule number of people. My friends wouldn't care either way what my position was.
How does where you stand affect your behavior?
I don't think it does. Does where you stand affect your behavior?
No, I don't think so. In terms of like, what am I doing about it in my daily life, or kind of like, what do you mean?
Yeah, if you were to change your position on this, would you behave differently in the world?
No, I don't think so.
I wouldn't either. Yeah, I wouldn't either.
So why the strongly?
Because I think it's an important moral principle is operative, and I think important social principle is operative, and I think an important principle of the people this does affect, it's life-changing. It's forever life-changing.
What would be different about the world if
I had my way?
Yeah, if this were not the case, or if you didn't feel this way, or if it were different.
What would be different about the world would be a lot of people would be happier. We would save a ton of money. We would be moving society in a direction that values flourishing.
Yeah, I don't negate the fact that there could be some benefit of this to society, that society might be in some way better off if this were to be the case, that IQ levels might rise. But like you said, I think that it affects so little people, and that the population of people that this affects is so low in terms of like the ones being sort of victim to it is so low.
I agree.
That it almost is negligible. But does affect some people. But
And
I
it
also
affects them.
Sure, yeah.
And it affects them radically.
Totally. But I do think that there are options available. So, for example, like if you don't want to deal with it, I think one option, for example, is putting your child up for adoption and letting the state take care of it, or letting somebody else take care of it, somebody who has the money or resources. And I understand that there's an empathetic issue there. But
I'm going to call BS on that. Nobody is going to adopt that kind of child. When we got our daughter out of an orphanage, the guy said to us, here are the people, the kids, she was a waiting child, children with disabilities. Some Chinese, but mostly Americans will adopt these kids. Then there are kids with severe disabilities in the orphanage. This is in China. The orphanage director told us only Americans will adopt these kids. And then another wing of the orphanage, he said, these are the kids with cognitive disabilities. They have no hope of adoption. Nobody's going to adopt a child like this.
It sounds like you agree very much, but you're arriving at opposite sides of whether you agree with the statement. Let's hear your rebuttal to that, and then maybe you can share your thoughts about how that happens.
yeah. So I think that there are people out there who will adopt these children. First of all, I know people who have like made it their life mission to adopt like 10 disabled children.
Cognitively, not physically.
Yes, cognitively.
Okay.
Actually, no physically disabled in that family. And I'm not saying that that's the majority of people. I'm not saying that everybody will. I'm saying that those people are out there. And here's what I think also is that allowing that child to live in an orphanage, even if the conditions might be poor, it is still exponentially better for that person than ending their life.
I'm not sure that's.
But it's not.
I'm not sure that's true.
Sure. I would argue based on a moral principle, because we couldn't possibly know if their condition is good. Like, we don't know what's going on in their head, right? we don't know what they're thinking. We don't know if they're happy. We don't know if they're sad unless we're them. Just like I don't know if you're happy or you're sad unless I'm you. We can't make that determination for them as a society. I think that degrades the non-aggression principle, which we generally operate off of in society. And I think that in terms of utility is much better than like putting these people out of their misery or reducing IQ or increasing IQ or anything like that. I think ultimately that choice on whether to continue on or die should be left up to that person.
But it doesn't violate the non-aggression principle for the mother.
No, I don't think so. I don't think that it violates the non-aggression principle with the mother or the parent, the father, because I think that in the situation of parents, there is a unique obligation. I think it's the only positive right that exists anywhere is the parental obligation to care for your child, which can be passed up, but has to be done like in a certain way. You can't just kill your child. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like you can't just shoot your child in the head. But like otherwise, unless you pass on that obligation in a moral way, i.e. adoption, you have to provide for your child. You can't starve your child. You can't kill your child.
All right. So I have a question for you then. What if the child was born with incredibly severe, a suite of horrific things, disabilities, cognitive malfunctions? I mean, really, they did not fare well in the genetic lottery, and they would be a lifelong medical patient. Would you change your mind?
No, I don't think so. Again, like I don't think that we determine somebody's right to live based on their perceived quality of life. I think that is up to them. Again, I agree with euthanasia. So in a situation where that's the case, I would hope that there would be a situation where that person can have either put themselves out of their misery or have a doctor do it for them if their life is so terrible. I think when it comes to the parents and the burden on them, I think they have a choice to make. They can make it a ward of the state, put it up for adoption, or keep it themselves and pay for it. And that mental struggle is going to have to be up to them. It's an unfortunate situation, but they have to make a decision, and it's definitely a hard one.
I have a question for him. When you say make it a ward of the state, basically what you're saying is that everybody should pay for it. Every taxpayer should pay for it. That, to me, does not seem fair.
Sure, I agree. But I think that there are. No, I agree. It's not fair. But I think that in the status quo, in terms of like practicality, there are a lot of things in our society that are unfair. We already pay for the medical care of old people. We already pay for like lots of other things. And while I don't agree with them, those are the current systems that we have in place. And debating on whether or not that social welfare is like, it seems like a completely separate issue to the morality of if it's okay to do this thing that we're talking about.
Can I ask him a question?
Wait, real quick, just to kind of step back, I want to get a little bit meta here. Going back to your main reason, let's just say hypothetically that you decided that reason wasn't a good reason. Whatever that reason is, would that move you?
If I decided that it wasn't a good reason, I mean, yeah, I would probably revert to neutral if there wasn't an alternative.
Okay.
No, go ahead. No.
Do you want to answer that?
What was your question?
If you found out that your main reason wasn't a good reason, hypothetically, would you move?
I have like 5 main reasons.
Take the one that supports where you're at the most.
If I just took that away, would I be on a different mat? No, I'd be on the same mat. Because I have multiple reasons that I weigh equally heavy in that deliberative process.
Okay. And so you're using reasons that if taken away
You said
wouldn't
main
cause...
You said, you didn't say reasons, you said reason.
You're using a reason.
Yes.
One of many.
Yes.
That if you took one of those away...
One.
Mm-hmm.
One. Yeah.
Wouldn't cause you to move?
I have at least 5, and if I took one of those away, you would have to take more than that away for me to move to the agree. You'd have to take like 2 or maybe 3.
Okay.
The more reasons I took away, the more mats I'd move.
Okay. What did you want to ask?
I can't remember, but it does strike me that if you agree that it's unfair to ask other people to pay for this, then that must mean that's an extraordinary statement. Then you must not value fairness in the same way that I do. Like, we must have a different first principle of fairness, how we weigh that.
No, I mean, I definitely believe in fairness. I think that we weigh it differently in this situation. We're talking about the status quo in a situation where we already provide, like everybody provides equally for lots of different things. Like, for example, children who aren't mentally disabled are still made wards of the state if nobody will take them. So like in the status quo, like these are the alternatives that I would provide. I disagree with the welfare state in general. I would say like probably pretty damn close to abolish the welfare state. But in the status quo, these are the recommendations that I would provide. And I do think that an act of killing something and degrading the non-aggression principle is much worse than a situation where you
Okay.
force people to pay for something. Because of what I think is like, you can argue that these people bring society down, right? You can argue that they create poor outcomes for their parents, for society at large. But I think that degrading the non-aggression principle and sort of creating a slip in the logic where you can now kill these people, I think creates a situation where now the non-aggression principle is broken. And once you break that, things get worse for everybody in
All right,
society. Because
I have a question for him. Let's take it from the abstract and talk about you. I've never seen you. I don't know if you're straight or you're gay or whatever. Let's say you're straight. Are you straight? Okay. Your girlfriend gets pregnant unexpectedly. She got taken out, whatever. She gets pregnant. You find out, the doctor's like, yep, everything's fine. We're all good. And then you find out in the third trimester, severe cognitive issues, cystic fibrosis, all bunch of stuff that for whatever reason, there was a mix up in the lab. Like you can make whatever reason you want. What would you do?
My instinct is going to be stay true to my principles, and I would probably like opt in to take care of the child. I don't know what my girlfriend would do. Maybe she would want to put it up for adoption. I'm not sure, but my instinct personally would be to take care of the child and care for it.
What's more valuable, non-aggression or fairness?
Non-aggression, but I think non-aggression is fairness.
What do you think? What's more valuable, non-aggression or fairness?
One is a subset of the other.
Okay, which one is the subset?
Fairness would be the broad rubric under which other things were subsumed.
Okay, so non-aggression is an example of fairness?
Yeah.
I think the opposite. I think that things are fair because they abide by the non-aggression principle. Or, but it depends on what you mean by fairness.
Well,
Because if you mean in like a moral way, it's like, I'm trying to think like, are we talking about like moral principles or like you're at the babysitter's and everybody gets one cookie, but Jimmy doesn't get one?
You can give me your definition of fairness and we'll check to make sure that you're using the same definition.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like morally, I think that fairness is going to be almost like equivalent. When you're talking about acts against other people, I think it's going to be almost exactly equivalent to the non-aggression principle. It's just going to mean justified. And I think that things are justified because they abide by the non-aggression principle. That's what my groundwork for everything that I believe is justified is probably going to come back to the non-aggression principle.
Yeah, fair is a tricky word. Moral words are tricky to define. And again, there are subsets and nested definitions within definitions. It's hard for me to do this without giving a synonym.
Do you accept his definition for fairness?
Broadly, I think he was spot on when he said justice. I think justice is fairness.
Okay, so if we're using the same definition of fairness, because you had mentioned it depends on how we're defining fair or fairness, right? So do you want to expand on your idea using that word?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much more I can expand on it. I think
Yeah,
just
it's tricky.
yeah, fair is just. Just is, in my view, when we're talking about actions against other people, abiding by the non-aggression principle. So if it's an unjust act of aggression, like let's say I come up and I punch you in the face, wrong, not just, not fair. If I punch you in the face and then I, get on top
okay.
of you and I'm beating on you and you hit me back to end that rights violation because I'm violating your right not to be unjustly aggressed upon now, that's just aggression back at me. That's fair. Right? So your just aggression is fair, but my unjust aggression is not fair.
Okay. So then my question becomes, how do you hierarchically prioritize instances of fairness? And why would this be in a different species of fairness than, for example, these individuals who consume resources who don't put back into the society. Like, why would that be? Explain that to me.
Yeah, so I don't grant, in my view, like, if I'm the dictator, I don't grant rights based on your contribution to society, based on your deficit on society, based on your physical attributes or achievements. I think that every human being, out of a necessity to protect self-interest and the interests of other people's, every single human being needs the right not to be unjustly aggressed upon. All of them. I think you take it away from one person, like let's say somebody who's disabled, I think now that cascades down and creates a very slippery slope to take it away from other people. What's the cutoff for how disabled do you have to be? You know what I mean? It just creates a very slippery slope. And let's say like now you decide like blonde people are inferior. Can we kill blonde people? Like, because let's say that blonde people disproportionately drain society and don't contribute. Can we kill blonde people? Or I'm trying to think. Like, you could do that with almost any attribute, and you could probably better empirically prove with this situation that these people are a drain on society. But I don't think that justifies taking their rights away.
I think those were strong points. The difference in this case is that it's not blind, it's cognitive. I mean, when I was in Taiwan, they had a lot of blind people massaging as masseuses. So there's something unique about the cognitive disability aspect, but there's also something unique about being in utero and the conflict of rights between the mother and the fetus and what the state should and should do, tell someone to do and how they should behave. So there are multiple competing moral domains at odds here. And I guess we're prioritizing those differently, I think.
Do you see the quality of Cam's reasons equally to yours?
I want to say yes, but I want to also be super honest with you about one thing. I would bet you with heavy odds that if that happened to you 40 years down the line, you would say, oh my God, I can't believe we should have gotten abortion.
Sure. And that could be the case. That's totally fine. It's fine to speculate that way. I think that lots of people, that would be the situation for them. I'd like to proudly say that I wouldn't do that, but who knows, right? But that's the difference between subjective actions and like sort of more objective morality or more objective frameworks for morality, right? Like, so this is one with abortion that a lot of people try to argue just broadly, right? Is if there's a burning building, an abortion clinic is burning down and there's 1,000 fetuses inside the burning building and there's one 10-year-old child, who do you save? Doesn't matter who I save, right? That's my subjective action. It doesn't make any claim on it doesn't make any judgment on morality, right? So if my dog's in there, maybe I save my dog, you know what I mean? Maybe, if my mom's in there, I'm definitely grabbing my mom and saving her. So that's I subjectively value my dog maybe more than 1,000 fetuses or more than a 10-year-old because I don't know that 10-year-old, or I value my mom more than the fetuses of the 10-year-old. Doesn't make a claim about morality. It's just subjective actions, which mean almost nothing in terms of moral judgments.
So I'll ask you, do you think his reasons sufficiently support where he is?
Yeah, I mean, I think his reasons support his position. I just disagree with the position. So yeah.
Can I say one thing? So I would be willing to change my mind if I had overwhelming testimonies of enough people who were in that situation, severe cognitive disabilities, third trimester, didn't get an abortion when they legally could have. And at the end of the day, they're like, wow, this has changed my life. And then everybody I speak to in society, like, yep, I know little Johnny and he may suffer from severe cognitive disabilities, but it really made me a better person when he walked over, as an actual example, to the refrigerator, opened my refrigerator, took off the cap of milk from the gallon and poured it on the floor. I became a better person, more kind, more humble, more understanding by cleaning up the milk, and over again for decades. Like if I had some kind of data of those testimonials, and if I had a time machine, and I hope this does not happen to you, obviously, but and I would see that, I'd be like, okay, wow, I was wrong, and then I should have probably be on the slightly, or the problem, maybe even the neutral, maybe. But then you'd still have the other reasons that would weigh in there too, the cost of society and the the conflict of rights. So I'd probably be on agree or slightly agree. Probably agree.
Based on the amount of people that hold a position morally?
No, based upon the sincere testimonials of people who have been in that position and people who have been related to people, and I don't mean familial relations, just related in a broad nexus or network of people. If those people said, absolutely, this is like one of the best things that's ever happened, or at least it's a good thing, and I wouldn't want it any other way, and I'm so glad, Jennifer did not get an abortion in the third trimester once we found out, that would definitely give me pause.
Do you use any of his reasons for this to support anything else that you would support?
Yeah, I do. Non-aggression, I think, is very important, extremely important. Even if it could say that it falls in that domain, you have, again, like your reasons. I have so many other reasons that you'd have to kind of balance those out at some point. But I don't really think that that's directly applicable. But yeah, I do use the non-aggression principle.
Okay, so how do you decide when to use it and when not to?
It's actually more complicated than not. It's more complicated in the issue of nation states, like we talked about. It's more complicated in the issue of abortion. It's complicated because what agency do we grant the fetus? People have been debating that hotly for 50 years, more than 50 years, but certainly since 73 that it got heated.
You heard his reasons. Do you use any of those reasons to support a view that you hold?
Well, I think that the flourishing of society is very important, of course, and I think that we should try to maximize the flourishing of society as much as physically possible. But I think that when it comes to a trade-off of rights and flourishing, I think that we should always prioritize the right not to be unjustly aggressed upon, because I think ultimately throwing that in the trash will will create the least positive outcome for human flourishing possible. So yeah, I mean, I think it's important. I'm also not a utilitarian. I'm very much against utilitarianism. I don't think that the rights of individual humans are outweighed by the benefit of society more broadly.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Can I ask him a question? I have a question for you. This is hypothetical. Let's say that the issue about which we're talking, he's probably figured out now, were far more prevalent than it is, and you had a time machine to the future, and that gated into two possible universes, one in which my position was operative and one in which yours was. In 50 years in the future, whose universe would you rather live in?
Mine, for sure. I think that there would be degradation of like the right not to be unjustly aggressed upon, which I think would cause more bloodshed, more negative outcomes for people. I think more people would be killed, more people would be stolen from, and I think that the governments would also become more tyrannical.
I'll give you a last word in just a second.
Okay. Now we got to go.
Last word.
That shows me there's a genuine difference of opinion.
Last words?
Yeah. I don't know that I have very many. I think it was a great conversation. I enjoyed it.
Cool. Thank you very much. Thanks for letting me do this.
Thank you. Oh yeah, we're gonna put it on the channel.
Sweet.
Well, what do you think? What did you gather?
Something about aborting disabled fetuses.
Not just disabled, severely cognitively disabled.
Okay.
In the third trimester.
In the third trimester.
It had to be the third trimester because we both agree, I think, broadly on the first.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
That was fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now let's go check this out.
Yeah.